Donkey Kong needs no introduction. The original game is perhaps the most recognizable arcade game to ever exist, except maybe Pac-Man. The high score competitions continue to this day and push the game into a mythical tier of obsession for many. But it's not the only Donkey Kong game in town. Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., Donkey Kong 3, and Donkey Kong Jr. Math all came to the NES in the summer of 1986, and are all a part of the original black box games that launched in the first year of the system. They hit shelves less than 8 months after the console's North American launch, and, except for Donkey Kong Jr. Math, were all arcade ports developed and published by Nintendo. There's not a lot to say about Donkey Kong that most don't already know, but to be sure, it's an arcade game where players play as Jumpman, who is obviously Mario, and jump over rolling barrels and dodge fire on the way to rescuing his girlfriend Pauline from his own pet gorilla, Donkey Kong. Jumping over fire and barrels gives you points, and you can use a hammer power-up to gain the ability to smash barrels for more points. Points are the main draw for many who play the game, as actually completing the game requires one to play well over 100 levels to achieve the ultimate kill screen, where the game just quits and surrenders to you. There's no good job screen or anything like that. There are 3 rotating levels, colloquially known as girders, because of all the girders, elevators, because of all the elevators, and rivets, because of, the rivets. There are 2 modes of play, A and B. A is easier than B, and Mode A becomes Mode B after one loop. There's also an alternating 2-player mode for high scores, and comparing how far each player can get. There are a few differences between the arcade original and the NES port. The arcade version has a conveyor belt level and blue barrels, while the NES has neither. Points are also much easier to accrue in the NES version. Other than that, it's a true to the original port that didn't have to sacrifice much in the way of graphics. So now that Mario rescued Pauline from his roided-out pet gorilla, he turns around and puts Donkey Kong back in the cage that probably kicked off his rage into kidnapping Pauline to start with. And do we know who Junior's mother is? Anyway, as Junior, you jump between vines collecting fruits and avoiding snapjaws, or alligators, as well as birds called nitpickers and whatever this is. Your goal is to reach the key that will set Papa Donkey Kong free. There are 4 levels. The first 3 you try to get the key, and in the 4th you push the keys into the appropriate keyholes to free your dad. Becoming vine savvy is crucial. If you climb up using both hands straddled between 2 vines, you'll climb faster, but you might only want to climb up 1 vine at a time if you're trying to dodge those snapjaws. Conversely, if you need to slide down fast to avoid an enemy, you'll only want to cling to 1 vine. You can also use the fruit along the vines to wipe out unsuspecting enemies below. Like the first game, Junior has a 2-player mode and a mode A and B, which are basically how you select difficulty, with A being the easiest and B the hardest. Compared to the arcade version, there are really no glaring differences aside from visuals. All 4 stages are here along with the same enemies and animations. Once again, it's a very basic experience, but is a faithful arcade port. In Donkey Kong 3, you once again control yet another character. Not Mario this time, not Donkey Kong, but Stanley? Stanley owns a greenhouse, and it appears as though Donkey Kong has escaped from Mario once again and has taken up residence in this greenhouse. Maybe thinking it's a jungle? Either way, Stanley, aka Stanley the Bugman, has to use his spray to keep all the insects and Donkey Kong away from his precious flowers. Stanley's in a pickle. Basically, use the spray to keep Donkey Kong as near the top of the vines as you can. Spray the bees as they come down to the bottom of the screen before they get to the flowers. Once Donkey Kong is high enough, he drops the special spray that shoots further, allowing you to push Donkey Kong over the top and out of the greenhouse. There are bonus points for successfully guarding the flowers as well. There's also snakes called creepies that slither down the palm trees to attack. They're slow but revive quickly. You can walk past them after they've been knocked out by the spray. There are 3 different rounds that loop over and over, not unlike the other games. It's not very deep. It's all about high scores and how much further you can get than your opponent. This one is as simple in concept as the previous 2, but is a different genre almost, going from platformers to what could almost be considered a shooter, though a rudimentary one at that. Donkey Kong Jr. Math is the only game on the NES featuring Donkey Kong, or Donkey Kong Jr. for that matter, that is unique to the NES. There is no arcade counterpart and no other ports. It's an edutainment game, meaning it seeks to entertain and teach all at once, and if you're an NES collector, you're aware that the cartridge for the game is a little pricier than the others too, somewhat due to low production being an edutainment release, but also because it was a commercial disappointment. So they made fewer, and people bought even fewer than that. As you'd expect, you solve math problems in order to win. There are a pair of modes. In one mode, a number is presented at the top, and you climb vines as DK Jr. to piece together your own math problems to achieve that number. You grab a number, then you go to the bottom for a mathematical operation like plus, minus, multiply, or divide, then back up for another number. Eventually, when you successfully do this 5 times, you win. In the other mode, you select a type of math problem and then simply solve it by sliding Junior to the correct number. If you solve it on the first try, you get a bird's egg beside that round, and that's the goal. While the game is hardly fun for those who enjoy platforming, shooting, and jumping on things, I suppose the game could be used to get some kids interested in math. The problems in the calculate mode are highly variable and perhaps more interesting as a puzzle game than the vine crawling mode. Of the 4 NES Donkey Kong games, it's hard to top the original for its place in history and its familiarity among gamers far and wide. Donkey Kong Jr. is a very similar experience to the original, but nowhere near as popular. Donkey Kong 3 is the black sheep, being a shooter instead of a platformer, but is fun if only for a short while. Of those 3, they're all more fun when competing with a pal for a high score or trying to see who can beat the most levels. They've aged well in that regard. As standalone solo experiences, you could definitely do better, and Donkey Kong Jr. Math isn't going to be anyone's favorite. If you want a little more of these, you could always try their arcade originals. Donkey Kong is the most popular, and as I said before, has an extra stage the NES version does not. Donkey Kong Jr. is very much unchanged between the arcade version and the NES version, but hey, if you like joysticks instead of D-pads, you might go for it. Same thing for Donkey Kong 3. The arcade version is basically the same as the NES version. If you want an upgrade of these experiences, definitely check out Donkey Kong on the Game Boy. The first few stages are remixed levels from the original 3 arcade games, but after that, the game turns into a puzzler where Mario must find the key to exit each stage. It was the birth of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong series, which last saw an entry in 2015 with Mario vs. Donkey Kong Tipping Stars. They're a lot of fun. Well, that does it for Donkey Kong. Don't let your pet ape steal your girlfriend, and thanks for watching.